My name is Relemohile Makoko. I'm a grateful recovering addict. My journey with drugs started in 2009. I was still in high school. I was doing grade 10. I started using with marijuana, which is the gateway. I started smoking, experimenting with my friends in high school. For me, it was a journey of which I never thought I would take, but I took that route. And there's this perception of drug addicts coming from bad upbringings. Fortunately enough, myself, I grew up in a in a good environment. My father was a breadwinner. My mother was a housewife, and I grew up in a good environment. You know, a supportive family, loving, caring, and I grew up in a good way whereby I had no complaints. But started hanging around, you know, friends which were not doing good things. Not that they were bad people, but they were not doing good things. I started hanging around with them, and I started using weed. From there on, I passed. I went to grade 12 and grade 11, grade 12, still using marijuana. And then I went to a party once with some mates, and these guys were not getting drunk. So I was wondering, like, how could people be drinking alcohol and they stay up all night? And they introduced me to cat. I started sniffing cat from that year, and things went spiral. I stopped going to school. At the time, I was doing matric, and I started doing bad at school. I started bunking classes, not going to school at all, and certain teachers which taught me from grade 8 would notice that there was a huge difference. I started being rebellious, being disrespectful, and that was not the kind of person that I was. And people who knew me knew that something was wrong, and I just dropped out during matric. I dropped out just before the prelims. I dropped out and I didn't attend anymore. At home, they thought that I was still going to school. The school contacted my parents. They told my parents that I wasn't coming to school and all of that. And I had to, be honest with my parents. And I told them that, okay, here's the thing. I'm using marijuana. I'm using drugs, and they sent me to Senka. Senka was my first institution when it comes to uh, drug addiction. So that year I went to Senka, and the school didn't take me back. So I was then given a transfer, and then I went to boarding school to complete my matric, which was in Nelspruit, Cephap's Academy. I went there, and even after detoxing at Senka, I still relapsed. It was a very tight environment. Cephap's is a semi-reformatory, so corporal punishment was there, but that didn't stop me from finding drugs and using. Still, I found a way to use. I met up with guys that were using in boarding school, and mind you, academically, I was still doing well, like the way they used to me doing academically at school. I was doing well, and that was a facade for me. That was a cover up for me. Okay, even though I'm doing drugs, academically I'm still doing good, and that's the only thing that I could hold on to. So I got to boarding school, and from using with foils and marijuana, I then graduated to injecting myself. Started injecting myself with heroin in boarding school, and I would like lose weight so bad that when my parents came to visit me at boarding school, my mom literally cried, seeing me in that state. But then they had this perception that maybe it was because I'm not at home and I'm not in my own environment. So that was the reason behind me losing weight. And yeah, from there on, that year, it went it went by very, very, very quick because now I was dependent on the syringe. Each and every day I have to have my fix. If I do not have my fix, then nothing happens. I'm sick, I'm in bed, I'm not doing anything. That's withdrawals from heroin, and it became hell. I lived on hell on earth. And fortunately enough, by the grace of God, I managed to complete my matric. And then I got an opportunity to go and study BCom law in Midrand Graduate Institution at the time. Now it's Pearson Institution. So I went there. My parents had this belief that because he's doing well academically, then he's fine. As long as he's doing well academically, he's fine. So I went there first year 2013. I went there 2013, and I remember waking up in the morning surrounded by new people, new environment. For me, it was a buzz. I felt like I was the man of the moment because everyone knew this side of me intoxicated. Because every time I used heroin, I felt like I was at my best potential. I could socialize with anyone. I can make any friends. I could even respond in lectures. I'd be so participating in lectures. I'd be doing so well. And at the time, I thought I was at my peak. I was doing so well according to me at the time. But the thing is, I am a drug addict. And I didn't want to acknowledge that. For me, it was just me doing me. This is normal as long as I'm doing well academically. That was the basic thing for me. It was like, as long as you're doing well academically, as long as, I'm not overweight, or, as long as I look presentable, then using drugs is not a problem. And then it became worse because the drugs are very expensive, because you never get enough of drugs. And being dependent on something is very draining because you always have to have that in order for you to feel like a normal human being. Um, I had a girlfriend at the time, so financially, I started struggling because it was an everyday thing. Just imagine each and every day spending more than 300 rand just to get a fix in the townships. At the time, people where I was in Midrand, they knew nothing about a heroin addiction. Heroin addiction was not a major issue at the time, and it was hard to get access to heroin. So I'd have to travel all the way from Midrand to Johannesburg CBD just to get my fix. So it was financially draining a lot. And yeah, I started dating this girl that year, and she fell in love with me. She even went to a point whereby she accepted the fact that, okay, this guy, he uses this to be normal, and it became a norm in our relationship. So I had to move in with her so that I can have more money for drugs. So I moved in with her, my parents still believing that I'm still staying in my own apartment and they're paying for everything. My parents were paying for everything, and I was just misusing resources. I would call my dad, tell my dad that I'm out of grocery. I'd call him, tell him that I need this textbook. I'd call him, tell him that I'm running out of, I'd make up many excuses just to get funds for my drug addiction. So that year went past by, and it was the finals. I remember 2013, the final exams, BCom law. So I was doing 12 modules at the time. So I hadn't submitted anything. I hadn't even um, attended some lectures. So for me to write that exam, I was just gonna waste time. So I didn't even pitch for those exams, and that was me dropping out first year in varsity. But the important thing at the time to me was my next fix. that wasn't an issue. So I made up stories, I forged results, and back home they had this belief that okay, next year, the following year, I'm doing second year become law. So I came up with the story that okay, fine, I want to move away from Midrand. I want to go to a different institution. So in 2014 I went with my parents Northwest University, Becca Northwest University in Potchefstroom. I registered there. They thought I was doing second year, but addicts, we always have our own ways. So it was as if like I was going to do second year there. So they paid for everything. My parents paid for everything. Went there 2014. They didn't even pitch for even one lecture. Drug abuse just took over my life. And it was in that year that something tragic happened in my life. I was using with a girl that I met with at campus. She was smoking heroin, but she was smoking it through a foil. And then I can't remember properly because I think my mind shut that out. So one evening she came to me, she was crying, and as a norm, we would just use, we were using buddies. So I injected her with heroin, not knowing that I knew nothing about an overdose at the time. So from there, she overdosed and she never woke up again. And yeah, that was a tipping point for me. It was a wake up call. I had this belief that I had just murdered someone. And that's when I hit rock bottom, 2014, 27th of April. I'll never forget that day. Woke up in the morning in shock. I was scared and I tried to wake her up. She didn't wake up. So summarizing the whole story, 2014 was the first time my parents knew that I was injecting heroin into my veins. 2014 was the year where I went to my first rehab. And then from there on, it has been rehab after rehab after rehab, detox problem after detox after detox. And yeah, things just went south, in and out of institutions, back to varsity. I was once in Rhodes University in Grahamstown. I dropped out. It's the story of my life. It has been the story of my life. 2023 on March the 13th, I was admitted at FRC after 6, 7 rehabs, after 4 higher learning institutions. I found myself in FRC by the mercy and grace of God. Before coming to FRC in 2021, my dad passed away because of COVID. And from at that point on, I had just given up on life, because my dad was my everything. He was always there for me. Hence, rehab after rehab, varsity after varsity, he was always supportive, and he had this belief that I could become a better person. And yeah, yeah, losing him just broke me. The time I lost him, I was clean and sober for a year and 2 months and a couple of days. And then I didn't use immediately after hearing about my dad's sudden death. It was just the process of mourning, that I just took a dip and I said, why am I living? Why am I still here if the person that I'm supposed to make proud, if the person that is always there for me is no more, then why am I still here? My addiction went deep, and I used my dad's funeral, my dad's loss, as an excuse to be in that sunken place whereby I don't want to feel anything at all. Yeah, and then it so happened that my mom was still aware of the fact that I'm an addict. She couldn't support me the way my dad used to support me, but she was there for me. Even when I didn't want her to be there for me. Like any other addict, we would steal. I used to steal in the house. I used to lie a lot. I used to be deceitful. Yeah, but for me, the thing is, I used heroin just to feel numb, to numb my emotions. And from my father's death till to the point whereby I came to FRC, it was just a dark moment. Um, I was just horrible. Everyone at home would just look at me and see like disappointment. I was in a sunken place. I couldn't even take care of myself. So on the 13th of March 2022, when I came to FRC, I was down. I was broken. I didn't want anything to do with, God, life, relationships. I was just living, and I had to go through the process, which took it took a lot of work from my sponsor, my drug addiction counselor, my mom. It took a lot from them for me to get to a point whereby I say, okay, it's fine. Let's try this. Let's try it again. I know I've been failing over and over again, but let me just try this. And yeah, I started opening up. I started expressing myself. After 10 years of drug addiction, I just had to give myself an opportunity to be me, because I had lost myself in the process. And I was so scared of being myself. Thanks to my drug addiction counselors, my social worker, my predecessors for being patient enough with me and allowing me to be me. I already knew the 12-step program. So for me, it was just like a revision. But this time, I had to apply everything that I was learning. Slowly but surely, I started applying and I became patient with myself. I started loving myself again. I started accepting myself again. I had one on one sessions and I would open up about who I am and the challenges that I'm facing and how am I going to solve those challenges. But still, I was still angry with God for taking away my dad. And there was a time where we went to church and I had to forgive myself. I had to understand that if Jesus Christ died for my sins on the cross, who am I not to forgive myself? It would be cursing the cross if I'm not to forgive myself for one thing which was so sensitive to me, forgiving myself for putting my late father, for putting my parents through so much disappointment, so much pain. It was the hardest thing I had to do, forgiving myself. I would forgive any other person but myself. But from that service at church, I came to believe that forgiveness starts with me. I have to forgive myself. I forgave myself. And then I started believing in the word of God again. I pray. It happened so quickly that me being here now is a God incident instead of it being a coincidence. So I started preaching the word of God again. My late father was a bishop at church. So yes, I am a pastor's kid. So I grew up in a church. I grew up in a Christian based environment. So I knew the word of God, but I wasn't living the word of God. So me going back into the relationship that I had with God, it gave me an opportunity to try life again. And I I just took it one day at a time. I did my 3 months program, and even before I completed it, I requested an extension, advised by my drug addiction counselor, my social worker, and my mom, of course. I took an extension, and God started, blessing me with opportunities. I started its computer skills development while I was still here, and then from there on, I started working at the bakery as a volunteer, and I worked there for 6 months. Currently, I am a trainee life coach here at the center. So for me, God has been making miracles in my life, and I'm so grateful that all the pain that I came through, all the tragedies, all the challenges that I went through, they introduced me to myself, and within myself I can now share the word of God with others. For the first time in my life, I am myself. I'm grateful. I feel blessed. I'm humbled. Throughout my journey, I was even at a point whereby I was volunteering as a life coach before coming here at Senka. I was there, and I was part of the Kimoja team, and from that, falling back into addiction, the mighty had fallen. And I realize now that before I was doing it through my own will, through my own understanding, through my own wisdom. But one thing has changed now. Now I live humbled by God's grace and mercy. And like I said, it's a day at a time, a day at a time. And I am grateful. Gratitude gives me that opportunity to, get more blessings and to be a blessing myself. Relemohile Makoko, a gratefully recovering addict, clean and sober for a year and a month.
Right. I'm just going to be asking you just questions.
Okay.
So just summarize on them. Uh, Now, based on your experience and all of that, now how are you spending on changing lives when on the cycle?
Yeah, for me, like changing other people's lives, being a vessel. When you are a vessel, you don't do things your own way, but you know from experience what doesn't work and what might work. And from experience, falling over and over again, I know that the only way it's gonna work for the next person, if if you find a way, that person can make it work. That's the only way it goes, because you cannot force anyone to change their lives. But then I believe in every individual there's that thing, that spirit that says this is the right path, and the right path always works.
You told me that today you're doing something, you're going somewhere. What's happening today?
Oh, today it's feeding the homeless. We have a project here at the center whereby every month we go out there in the streets, we feed homeless people, addicts in the street, and we just bless them with the meal. And today it's a significant day because we are also washing their feet today.
And then for someone who's out there who has lost hope in life and they're deep into using and all of that, and they do want to come to rehab, but they're skeptical. They want to come to a pharmacy. Be specific. What would you say to them?
Yeah. All I can say to, our brothers and sisters who are still struggling in the street, who have lost all hope, is that, as long as the sun still comes up in the morning, God is saying, here's another day, here's another opportunity. If you want something, you're going to go out there and you're going to go and get it. You know, find means, ask relevant people, go to outpatient programs, ask relevant people, and you'll get that info whereby you can come to a place like this. Social development can help. There are people with information out there. All you need to do is ask the relevant people, and you'll find your way through to Freedom Recovery Center.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.